Bună ziua, bine ați venit. Hello, thank you for coming. We will have the second day of conferences today. We will hold them again in English because we have so many guests from abroad and colleagues that participated in the creation of this complex project named Bright Cityscapes. This is the second day of the conference, The City, Technology and Design, a short phrase in order to describe this complex process of combining so many professionals from different disciplines. The topic of today is mainly research both as a part of an artistic process, but also academic research, and the way in which research can help us build a different urban landscape and the city of tomorrow. And because today we are talking a lot about research, and you will hear this word maybe a bit too much, I am happy to introduce the rector of the Polytechnica University of Timișoara, who is next to me, Florin Dragan.
Hello, everyone.
And as the host of this program, Bright Cityscapes, together with Faber, I'm asking you how the institution assumed this role as being a key player in the cultural area, Polytechnica being, of course, a technical university, as we know. And why did you assume this role for the year of the Capital of Culture and beyond?
Okay, first of all, was easier than I expected 2 years ago when we begin to discuss about different kind of projects at confluence of arts and technology, for example. And you know that if the Capital Culture was in 2021, we wasn't so prepared like this year for a lot of projects to have a center of art and technology in the campus, to have different projects in the campus or outside the campus. And that time, 2 years ago, when we begin to build this lot of projects for this year, with you, of course, and with other colleagues, I expected to be more difficult for our researchers to involve them in the projects. But what easier than I expected, we have these days 4 or 5 for my colleagues. We have a lot of other colleagues involved. We have students involved in these projects and in these installations. And for me, this is for us, for the university, is very good, because for Romania we reaffirmed the first of technical universities, or the first from the field of universities, as we had the tradition in the past. So because today or in last years, the way of learning our students had to change, and we have to change in next future. And because the university or universities and the higher education system is a conservative system, I consider that with this project, not with this, just with this project, but with this project, to cooperate with centers from private zone or with other actors from the market, it's very good to underline the research of our university, not through the classic way, but to different way of expressions.
Thank you. Today we will have 3 panels, as you well know. And for the first panel, I will ask to come with me on the stage the 4 researchers that were part of this process of building the exhibition, together with 4 designers. The researchers that I will name each one of them, and the designer with whom they worked, and I'm inviting you to see the exhibition and understand better their work and their collaboration The exhibition Turn Signals is open until the 11th of November, so we are waiting for you and waiting for your remarks on it. I will welcome Cristina Stângaciu from Automatics and Computer Faculty, which worked with Flora Lechner. Versavia Ancușa, also from Automatics and Computers Faculty, which worked with Cinzia Bongino. Raul Ionel from the Electronics and Telecommunications Faculty, who worked with 𝗼𝗿će. And Ioan Both from the Construction Faculty, whom worked with Eugenio Cosentino from Parasite Studio. Thank you all for coming. For a first question, I have a very difficult task for you. I will ask you to please say in one phrase the essence of your research in this collaboration with designers, a collaboration which we already know from yesterday that was, of course, out of your comfort zone, but a very successful collaboration. The designers spoke beautifully about you, and I know that you also talked very highly and dearly about this process. So we will not focus on this aspect, which is a very nice one, the good result that you already have, which is also due to Martina's work, the curator, who had the hard task of matching each one of you and matching your expertise. But coming back to the difficult question, can you please say in one phrase what's the essence of your research embedded in this project? And to make it even more difficult, can you please say it in a very common language so that everybody can understand? Who wants to start? Ancușa?
Okay, I'm not very sure about the common language, but basically we did something, my research focused on showing the interaction between waste streams and the way that it never stops.
Thank you.
Okay, so my research was focused on different aspects that were integrated in an installation representing the automotive industry.
And more specifically?
More specifically, we had embedded systems, smart sensors, filters, real-time filters. Basically, that was.
Thank you.
Hello. Our work was inspired from the field of electronics, specifically the production of circuit boards, PCBs as they're called in common language. And we have been trying to present a work which is inspired from the constant battle with the manufacturing processes and the mistakes that appear during those processes, and the fact that engineers, researchers, developers, everyone involved in this field is trying to reduce errors, to reduce faults, and produce more and more goods of higher and higher quality.
Hello. Yes, one phrase for what happened here would be that the designer highlighted the hidden part of my research. Usually we are not very visible on to the eye, the structures of buildings, but they managed to transpose something which is hidden into something beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for the support, dear audience. I want to thank you here again for the fact that you were so brave this year in May when we launched the application for professors researchers from the Polytechnica University that want to get out of their comfort zones and get in a collaboration that they knew nothing about. And thank you for your trust in what you do and in us for jumping in this. I would like to ask you if this collaboration had the opportunity to start something also in other colleagues or maybe in the department, or only what was the impression of your colleagues on what you are doing?
The other way. Yes, surprise would be the key word, I think, to your question. I was expecting something different at the beginning when I first read the call, but because some of the production happened within the Department of Steel Structures, some of my colleagues were always asking what's happening there, and they could saw a little bit of the result, but they couldn't understand at the beginning until I told them the entire process of the Bright Cityscape. So yes, I encourage them to involve in something like this, and they would be surprised to leave something different than the common environment that we are working in.
In my case, I think that at the Measurements and Optical Electronics department, everyone was a little bit surprised about this collaboration. We did not know exactly where this path was going to take us, but I guess that this was the purpose of the project. And I was lucky enough to work with Jing, and hopefully we arrived at a significant result. And I would say that for the future, other colleagues would be for sure interested in such a collaboration, because I think that sometimes we feel the need to get out of an environment, a professional environment in our field of electronics that is, let's say, surrounded by regulations, surrounded by fixed rules, by standards and so on. And a little bit of imagination and artistry cannot hurt in this direction.
I had support mostly from the research laboratory in which I activate the SP labs, and the colleagues were glad because I could introduce some of the students' work in our installation, even diploma projects that were developed not with the idea of the Bright Cityscape, but being in the field of our research, they were integrated in the installation.
Okay, so the reason why I joined Bright Cityscapes was for personal curiosity in the beginning, and basically because I wanted to see what a designer could do with a complex network, which is what I do, and make it pretty. How can we make it pretty, you know? Because otherwise all the scientific papers kind of look the same, you have the same graphs and stuff. So the end result, the animations and the belt and so on, are a surprise. And when I showed that to the people in the department, they were, wow, we didn't know it could be that pretty, actually. So yeah, I think it's a very good idea to continue this path, because a little bit of whimsy maybe brings a lot in the scientific community.
Thank you. So you are all agreeing the fact that this helped a lot your activity, or made you see in a different way your field of research. I will ask the rector in which way we can promote further this type of collaborations, and how to make researchers more visible.
Okay, for me, was very nice to see Thursday evening was the first meeting here. A lot of the exhibition. Was a lot of colleagues from our faculties, from the university, not just from these faculties, but of course more of them from these faculties. Very interested to see what happened here, what was doing from our colleagues with the designers. and was something different, a kind of vibe different from what I usually have, or we usually have in our university. And I assume to say for a technical university in Romania, because it's a different paradigm to express here in Romania the research, our research, through art. So from this point of view, I'm sure that is a big step forward, and this is very important because I used to say that for the university, for our university, this year is very important, but very important will be what will happen after this year, and this is happen here in change our mind, our mindset to see the research in a different way, to express our research in a different way, and this is an important thing regarding Bright Cityscape and the projects for this year. So I have a lot of expectation for this year, for the last months, but for the next years, because I'm sure that my colleagues will ask to the management to have this kind of cooperation or bring to the university this kind of cooperation, atypical for Romania.
Thank you. I will ask you now maybe to reflect a bit on this experience. I'm sure you already have done this. And think about how this collaboration and the dialogues that you had with the designers, the dialogues that forced you in a way to express what you think about in a very common language, as I said, not in the sense that they wouldn't understand, but in the sense that they come from a totally different area of expertise. And I would like to ask you how this experience helped you in maybe formulating differently the disciplines that you are holding at the university, or how this experience would help you to rethink your pedagogical way of acting, of activating.
Pedagogically, I would say that what happened in my collaboration with Versavia 2.0 and Eugenio especially would be on my first course every year, because I'm a structural engineer, and for the structural disciplines, this work integrates all the typologies of elements that students should know. So, because it's also colorful, I would think it would be even more attractive to students. But to explain usually the explanation to students are quite plain, drawing straight lines and stuff like this, but now they also have colors which transmit the invisible forces as the designers captured my explanation from my research.
In my case, I would think that, and also I think that Jing feels the same, we had to find a common way of understanding each other, because the field of electronics, and especially manufacturing of electronic printed circuits, involves a lot of standards, a lot of specialized equipment, a lot of conditions, a lot of rules, and so on and so forth. And looking at this field from a highly specialized point of view, I don't think it's very attractive for anyone. For me neither, as I would say. So I guess we had to talk to each other and to find a way to explain things in order that we both could understand what we wanted to say, and especially in my case, I tried to do the best I can. Jing said that she understood a lot of what I said, so I think that this is an achievement on my part. But returning to the university lectures and laboratories that we have, I don't think that these days talking from a highly scientific point of view with our students is very attractive. So basically, I think that this project helped us, or helped me, to develop better my way of explaining things, such that this field of electronics with focus on manufacturing can be understood, at least in basic principles, by anyone with a little desire to listen to what I have to say.
So firstly, the collaboration with Flora Lechner was easier than I thought. So she was very eager to know about our field. So I didn't have to, I don't know, to lower a lot the concepts, because she read about them. So that was impressive for me. And regarding what I've changed, I realized that my topics were pretty serious, and maybe next time I will emphasize the fun part more for students. And I'm glad that the students were involved, and for them also was a surprise that their work could be exhibited in this way. Their work is pretty and fun.
Okay, what drove me a bit crazy at the beginning of working with Cynthia was the way she was thinking, because she was thinking a lot differently than, very differently than me. She was thinking in macro sizes, she was thinking in systems, and she always wanted to see the whole flow at the beginning and didn't want any details afterwards. And I tend to be very analytical and go straight for the big details. But actually, her way made a lot of sense. So I think it's a very good thing to remember when I'm talking to my students, that maybe most of them don't want so many details and want the system view, the upper view, and afterwards, if you need the more details, okay, go here and go here. So yes, that would be a takeaway from a pedagogical perspective.
It's very nice that while you were describing the situation, I was remembering the first discussion that we had with Martina and Raul, when Martina kept on asking Raul, okay, I understand it's about the PCBs, but what is the bigger perspective over them? What is the global challenge around them, and what is a thing that could bring other people which are not professionals closer to your domain? And I think then Raul, it was very nice that Jing is from China, and she has this background, and you also remembered, or it was quite recent, your pedagogical activity in China. So maybe also this helped you a bit in framing your domain in a wider sense. What do you think?
I also remember the discussions with Martina in the beginning. So this is what I have to say. Yes, and it really helped me to, pull out of the, let's say, specific and detailed view on the manufacturing processes, and maybe take a parachute and go to a higher level, and look from there to what I could discuss with Jing, and of course Jing also helped me in this perspective. And I would have to say that for me this was a plus, in the sense that I could lift, my view from the specificity of the field and look, as our colleague said, at the system concept. And thanks to Jing, Martina,
Thank you. I would also, maybe one last question. I would like to ask you, and also the director, if this process, this project, made you think also a bit. You already said you thought differently about your work, but did it made you realize something in your specific domain, like a scientific question maybe, or a path to study beyond, or anything in your specific domain? Because we all know that in order to be a good researcher, of course, you need to be in the detail, and the focus in your hyper-specific area, it's the one that counts, the one that is in scientific articles and all that. Did it help you realize something in that area?
Okay, let's switch. So yes, but in a different domain. Some other projects I'm working for are on the medical field, and researching how the waste flows and the timeline, basically the wage changes, kind of gave me an idea how to do that in fibrosis, which is, well, the lung disease. But yeah, I talk with my friends, and we're probably going to start working on that in October. So from waste to lung disease, but, well, it works sometimes. It's the way you analyze the dynamic data. So we kind of thought it could be used the same way. So it's highly specific, sorry.
Yeah, difficult question. One thing I realized during this this collaboration, there were many ideas that we discussed and dropped because finally we went to one concept, but there were discussion about other fields also. And maybe one thing that I realize now is that this concept, this very abstract concept like real-time systems, mixed criticality systems, and so on, that I have studied, can be studied in other perspective, like, for example, the way they impact the pop culture, the so-called pop culture that we have exploited with this installation, and the relationship with people. And one question that I am meditating about, and maybe I will leave also the visitors that have seen the installation to think, it's the way we influence technology, but the technology influences us back. So there is a bidirectional influence, and we can meditate about its aspect, its limits, its size, and so on. Thank you.
So I would have here two ideas. First of all, I was used to looking at manufacturing faults and mistakes and so on and so forth, and analyzing them and trying to find a solution. But never in a million years would I have imagined that those could be exhibited at an exhibition at Faber, and people would come and look at it. And yeah, never could I have thought that they can be expressed in an artistical way. So this is the first idea. And the second idea would be, how can I get my hands on the works of Chen after the exhibition is finalized? Because I think that besides the artistic concept and the sentiments that it transmits, they are a very useful educational tool. And this is supported by the idea that we don't have great access for the students to tools of optical inspection, which are very expensive, highly specialized, and so on. But these works actually put in front of the viewer what problems and what faults can arise in this field of expertise. So in our area of electronics and manufacturing, it would be a great educational tool as well.
Although it's a complex structure with all the typologies of elements that we use, the structure is not necessarily challenging because it's not subjected to high forces at this moment. In the laboratory of steel structure, we usually see these elements which are destroyed. This is how we recognize that beam is resistant or not. But it was a challenge that the designers view to have this triangle. So basically, just to say my idea, is not necessarily on the research part, but on the production part, because it was a challenge to have this corrugated sheet supported on triangles. And I would say, okay, yes, this is challenging, I will do it. And finally I did it. Thank you, Eugenio. So yes, the answer is that it gave me new ideas regarding how structural elements can be supported and can look differently from what we see every day in construction sites.
Okay, like usual, I as a manager, I didn't work, but I have a strong point of view regarding their work together with you. No, it's not strong. It's just a point of view. I could compare maybe easier from my point of view and from my colleagues' point of view, like a software. And we as a programmer work on that software and have to test our software. And of course, we did or do just 10% errors because we know our software, but someone else who come outside from our project will damage a lot because introduce a lot of errors, but help us to improve a lot our work. So this is a perspective from a computer science point of view. On the other way, from my perspective as a rector, it's very important to see your work from a different perspective. And my colleagues said this today. And it's very important for our students because we teach them, but in some cases, we disseminate some of our research results to them, and it's very important to improve their creativity. And this different perspective from the art point of view help us to understand better how to improve our students' creativity. And this is very important in how we see the new way of learning or education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for a wonderful talk. For the second panel, we will leave the stage and I will invite Cristian Blidariu, the Dean of the Faculty of Architecture and Urban Planning, as a moderator, which will have a talk with Eugenio Cosentino and Ioan Both.
Should we do this? Maybe I'm on one side and you, or okay. Eugenio, this is yours. Yeah. Entanglement. Yes, this is what this project is about. First of all, let me thank you for giving me this opportunity of discussing with an architect and engineer coming together in an excellent project, I might say. I highly praise what you have done together, and also to thank our hosts and I would say Oana and Martina and Lore, who have managed this project. Even for us as a school, we are also part in the school program. But we will not focus on that, but on what you have done for this exhibition. And what I found interesting was to see this marriage between an architect and an engineer, and it is usually the architect that designs, and then the engineer comes in and does the magic, and as you have said, makes things look like they're for granted, like entering a building and it just stands. But this time, I think it was the other way around. I think it was the architect that tried to work, to follow the engineer's work. Am I correct in assuming that?
Definitely, yes. Actually, we started this collaboration starting from what is the research of Ioan, what are his tests, his studies, and we saw for the first time the application he presented for the open call, and we were super interested in what he does in terms of on both sides, let's say the contents, but at the same time the visual aspect of what he does. Actually, we were very impressed by the diagrams and of these structural elements used in constructions, where they have to hold, let's say, they are tested with forces, stresses, in order to understand the strains within these construction materials. And so we started from his research, and we started from these diagrams, and we wanted to make them physical, let's say. We wanted to not leave them inside a screen, but we wanted to extract from the 3D softwares, and we wanted to, let's say, make more visible the outcome of his tests, but at the same time using them as a metaphor, as a representation of the hidden work of a structural engineer. I think it's the collaboration, I think, has important touches different topics on different levels to the scale of the details. As, for example, before Ioan was saying, he had to understood also how to produce some parts of the composition of the structure, but at the same time, looking at the bigger picture, let's say, of what is his work. I think that it touches topics very important for the evolution, for the development of a city, for example. In fact, for example, the company who produced the structure is the one in charge of producing also the extension of the Timișoara airport. Actually, they are producing some part of it, structural part of it. So I think there is this very strict and very strong bond between, let's say, an artistic interpretation of his work, but at the same time, in the development of a city, like that is what we see, what we inhabit, and there are, maybe there's another question, and then I can go on saying other things. Yeah, otherwise I can talk for.
Well,
like
I think Ioan
1 hour,
Ioan already expressed some of his ideas, but we will come back to the main protagonist, I might say, of the installation. But I think it's interesting you mentioned that the beam is a real one. It is not a fake. There's no fakery in the beam itself, but the post, the thing that it rests on, that has a different quality. It is not the real thing. So I think that is really interesting in how these two materials come together. And why did you choose to make a soft pillow on?
Yeah, actually, as I was saying before, we wanted to make more visible and physical what Ioan develops with the softwares he uses. And so we wanted to exactly reproduce what happens inside the screen, inside the computer, for example. So the thing that actually the beam, when it's activated, let's say, tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm saying something stupid, but it actually blends the concrete block, for example. And we wanted to make this very little detail, but also very important for us, more visible. This is why the entire construction, the entire, let's say, sculpture, let me use this word, is installed in order to just blend the mattress with like these 2 centimeters that actually reproduce the movement that the concrete block it could do in the software. And so we decided to use something that is very soft. Actually, it's a mattress. It's a block of foam in order to make it blended in order to make visible this combination between the forces of the beam, of the truss on top of a concrete block. That actually is what he studied. So, and also the thing that we wanted to, we used an entire steel truss together what it should be a concrete block, but actually it's foam, is because they are also two of the most used materials in the construction world, in the construction field. So, but as I was saying before, all the reflections, all the steps of the project came from Ioan research actually. And then we, let's say, played together in order to recreate the best volumetrical shape, the best volumetrical composition. But actually everything was coming from the fascination we had from the first pictures, the first diagrams we saw from his research actually. And I think he was not considering so interesting his work before.
That's why I want to switch to Ioan now,
Yeah.
because I think even to me it was surprising to see probably what is the biggest object in the exhibition, if I'm not wrong, and to me it evokes a sculpture like any that maybe Donald Judd would do. So it's a very artistic object in itself. But then again, it is very didactic, as Ioan said. And I'm curious to see, how surprised were you to see, maybe you're not at all, but to see that your type of research can translate into such an artistic object? Because usually when I go to, and sorry for making this parenthesis, when I go to exhibitions, engineers expect pretty things in exhibitions, paintings, things like that. But now it's science that gets transformed into something that is visual. And how do you feel about that?
Yes, from what Eugenio said earlier, I have to thank the computer programmers, the software programmers, that they reached this level of developing softwares to be able to explain what I do. Otherwise, what I'm doing in the laboratory is just scrap steel after this. But now, by using these computer programs, I could explain what happens inside the structural element. And Eugenio understood very well and transmitted by this sculpture everything that I wanted to express. Forces, stress, equilibrium, balance, massiveness. Because if you go to the sculpture itself, if you try to push it, you will feel how heavy it is, but also stable in a short manner. If the structure would have been maybe fixed to the ground, you cannot feel not necessarily the soul of the sculpture, but what it really represents. Massiveness, and this is what structures are.
So it has a sensual reading attached to it as well? You could say that?
Yeah, maybe.
Should we interact with it? Try to move it around?
You can try, pay attention. Not because of the sculpture, because it's dangerous for the person who tries to do it. And yeah, at the same time, I would say that sometimes we had a very artistic approach, let's say. Also because I think in this case it worked well because Ioan's work is very scientific, and we want to counterpose something that is completely different. And also this is why the title of the project is Composition of Stress and Balance #1. First of all, because maybe in the future there could be others composition, like #2, but also because it's a title that maybe a painter could give to his painting, Untitled #1, or something, Untitled #2, this series of projects. And so we wanted to use also give to the project a title that could link us to the artist, to the art world, let's say, even though we are part of a design exhibition, but we thought it was a good way, a good language to talk about Ioan's work, Ioan's research. And at the same time, since we understood that words and topics like stress, balance, equilibrium, strains, forces were so important that they stand at the base of Ioan's research, of Ioan's work. We wanted to use these two particular words, stress and balance, that can also be applied to other words. You know, for example, to the working conditions, or to the nowadays working conditions, and to what is manpower, what is manufacturing also, because we cannot divide the topic of composition, engineering, manufacturing, and manpower. So we wanted to use also words, a lexicon, as you can find also in the exhibition, the lexicon on the walls of the exhibition. We wanted to use very specific words that could help to put together different words, but at the same time are very linked and connected, as Ioan and me working in order to design something that you can see here inside the exhibition, but at the same time, all those aspects and factors that are part of the growth of a city. His work, the company that produces structural elements for the airport, and then so the infrastructures that allow a city to grow, you know. So I think that there are different topics and layers that we try together to develop, to make them more clear. Yeah.
Well, you took the question right out of my mouth, because we discussed before coming into this panel about the title, which I think is also important to your work. You cannot separate the title from the work and the many meanings that it adds to your work. So, in what could be like a final remark on your collaboration, how did this? Because we have seen that for Ioan it was something new as an experience. I was curious if you have worked in similar formats with people that, researchers, I don't know, that are not from your field, but have produced such results before, and if this informed you as well in doing different things in the future, or similar things, yeah.
Well, I have to say that we try as much as possible to work in this way in our practice, because we are always interested in different topics that regards I'm an architect. I studied as an architect, and I practice also as an architect in different scale, from the design of furniture, sometimes in a more artistic way, like in this way, but also producing more architectural things. But also we are interested in, I say we because I'm a part of a collective. We're interested also in more in the big picture, as I was saying before, and so we always try to focus on some aspects, on some concepts, inviting experts of those topics to talk with us about those topics. You know, about, for example, urbanism, but also in this case, for example, who is behind the construction of a building, of an infrastructure. And so in order to understand better what are the main aspects, the main topics, the main things about their work. So I think that we cannot, as individuals, have a complete vision, a complete perspective of a specific topic, but we try to always link ourselves with experts of those topics. So actually I think it's fundamental in order to go deep into a topic, in order to develop an exhibition like this one, to talk with researchers that are spending maybe their life in about a topic, and then we can put together the dots, we can link them, and we can have an exhibition like this one. That is also what the curators did so far. And actually, I think that this wouldn't be possible if we weren't working with Ioan, you know. So yeah.
Well, it was in a way a question that had the answer attached to it, because I know that this is the format that you usually work in, but it is something that is probably new maybe to architects, but not to artists here in Timișoara, in Romania. I think it was amazing how your work as an architect and your research and Ioan's research as an engineer translating into a design object, something that is maybe maybe outside of our, let's say, comfort zone in exploring and expressing ourselves. I think this type of translation that you and your colleagues have produced is highly relevant in showcasing the invisible, as Ioan said, research, type of research that is not often seen or understood by the general public. Since I think we have reached the end of our short discussion. Thank you for this wonderful collaboration. And I truly hope that we will see the number 2, the number 3, and the next iterations of your work, maybe in Bright Cityscapes 2, 3, 4, who knows. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being back with us. We will start now the third panel for today in the conference, the City, Technology and Design, which is a part of our complex project, Bright Cityscapes, and it tries to explain and give a better perspective on the process that we are doing until now. This third panel talks about research, but not necessarily in the traditional way or by traditional institutions, but by independent bodies like associations or centers. And I will invite on stage the people that are part of this process. And I will start with Martina Muzi, who's the curator of Bright Cityscapes and the bright mind behind us, or in front. Aric Chen, who's the artistic director of 𝗼𝗿𝗺𝗺 Institute, and we will hear more about the research that you are doing in the fields of design and architecture. Alina Șerban, who's a curator for Institutul Prezentului, and she also has, together with Ștefania 𝗍𝗿că𝗿𝗺, the publishing company 𝗍+4. I will invite then Nadine Botha, who's an editor, a journalist, and a curator. So she has, she's a multidisciplinary professional. And Oana Simionescu, the coordinator of Bright Cityscapes from 𝗍𝗿, and myself as the coordinator from Politehnica University of Timișoara. And I will ask Martina and Aric to moderate.
Thank you. We spent a lot of beautiful words in the conversations before, but it's also beautiful to invite and open the circle about stories and processes. So I would, 𝗍𝗿 hosted for in this occasion the opening of 2 exhibitions. And so we thought that the third and last panel would also look at the present and potentially also the future of what our practices are. Practices that are in different places. We have been all working in different contexts, depending on our, let's say, time. In this case, coming to Timișoara together and exchanging some thoughts. Considering we spoke about Bright Cityscape a lot in this panel from the perspective of research within academia, I would ask Alina to break the ice and also give us a couple of words of introduction to your exhibition, Performing 89, that is open here in the same courtyard next door.
So thank you very much for the invitation. And also a pleasure to be here with Martina. It's our second collaboration. We actually did an exhibition together, also with Oana as well. So it seems to be back together in a sort of collaboration. Before it was an exhibition also dealing with Timișoara history. It was called Cartography of Learning, about experimental pedagogy. A very interesting program done by artists here in the 70s, Sigma group. So also dealing with design, industrial design, architecture. So quite progressive, based on Bauhaus principle, and also more kind of similar with Black Mountain College, but this was for the high school students. And coming back to the exhibition here, so it's very good, I think, the association between what you did in the courtyard and our exhibition, let's say 2 time frames, but in the same time meeting for a certain need, which is reflected in the present by our generation. So just to give you a brief presentation of the Institute of the Present, which is a NGO, an association founded by myself and my colleague Ștefania 𝗼𝗺će𝗴𝗿. We deal a lot with research as a main kind of ground from which we start our projects. Have several medium or methods, so mostly in the field of publishing, recording oral histories, and also we have once or 2 years this type of exhibitions, which are a sort of reconstruction of certain historical moments from local art histories, but in a comparative surrounding. So performing 89, it's about the turn of the decade. We talk about the 90s, and it was not unfamiliar that we are bringing the exhibition here, because you know the history of Timișoara and the role it has at the beginning of the 90s in changing the societies and the hopes that started at the beginning of the 90s. And we were triggered by 3 aspects in our projects, which is somehow reflected in our methodology of working, which is based on 3 lines: record, learn, record, and transfer. So everything is based on this idea of learning and relearning and unlearning in the same time. So we learn in the process of doing research, and we record everything. So this is another issue of research that comes up and develops as a big archive of information. And the third one, it's the idea of transfer, and exhibition is one of the mediums from which you can transfer some of the data you record in your research and make visible something that remains most of the time invisible. So this is a huge research done by us, 2 years, comparative. It deals with Romania, Hungary, and Serbia, so former Yugoslavia during the decade of the 90s. Is not unusual because Timișoara has border with both countries, and it was important for us to make this kind of statement. So we need this type of exhibition that really reflects on Romanian art, but in a regional context, and Timișoara was the good opportunity and context to do this. And then there is another aspect of generation. So 90s was the generation that started from the zero. So they had this chance to do this from the scratch and also to create their own models, references, which are based, we're still working on this self-collaboration, safe management, all this sharing of resources. So this idea of serving the other was in the other way one of the main focus of our research. And then the last element of the exhibition that it could be seen here is mostly the connection between art and public sphere. So the core of the exhibition actually is the relationship between artists and society in the 90s, in the various forms and discourses and narratives. So either you see the street, the city, the public space, the public sphere, local environment. So it's more this kind of construction in a very particular way, starting from particular events that happened locally, and works very nice, I think, in the exhibition because the stories connect each other. So sometimes in a more, let's say, aesthetical ways, but other times they are very visible in terms of attitude. So this is kind of brief of what we do and what is here in the backyard. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a very unrehearsed panel. That's super interesting, Alina, and it's a really great show. But I thought maybe we could sort of step back, talk a little bit about the processes behind Turning Signal, and Bright Cityscapes, and the broader agenda around that, which I think will then come back to this notion of curating. And what's been so fascinating with this with these talks this afternoon, as you have these sort of designers and engineers and researchers talking about their collaborations and reflecting on these interactions that they had and what both sides learned from the other. But I think now for this talk, we're kind of pulling back a little bit and talking about how you then connect those multiplicities of interactions into a kind of bigger story or bigger effort, right? And this is something that is super relevant on a very broad level when you talk about cultural infrastructures and also the extent to which the cultural sectors are trying to kind of tackle these very complex issues, whether it's, you know, ecology, climate change, local regeneration, social and other forms of regeneration and so on. And I'd like to maybe ask Oana, who's kind of, you know, a bit of a the mastermind behind a lot of this, right? And I think this applies to all of you, actually, whether you're talking about a university or this sort of creative space that 𝗼𝗺𝗺 is, or as a journalist / curator. I mean, how do you see your role in kind of orchestrating these kinds of interactions? And can we sort of talk about the need for maybe being inspired by your show this morning, the need for the role of a kind of knowledge logistics in coordinating all these different kinds of knowledges that we're trying to bring together?
So maybe it would be good to start with a story that begins like more than a decade ago. When I actually came back to Timișoara from Copenhagen after working in this extremely optimistic and well-designed city, it was a really important question for me. How could I, as an architect, as a creative professional, express the same level of creativity in this environment where I was born and where I thought I could bring much more than into such a perfect setting as Copenhagen is. And I struggled with this question for many years, coming back and doing architecture here. I realized that architecture is also a cultural act, so it's really difficult to perform in architecture in a place that doesn't have the taste for it. So this kind of taste is really difficult to develop. This is why I started getting involved in the Biennial of Architecture here, which also focused on Serbia and Hungary and Romania together, trying to talk about architecture to the wider public in a manner that makes it interesting and valuable as a cultural act. But in time, I actually realized that architecture is really specific. And it's really difficult to engage with the wider audience on a such specific level. And I realized that it is important to widen the talk and to not just talk about it, but also give the means to develop more consistent formats. And this is basically how 𝗼𝗺𝗺 appeared as a need that I felt that we have here in Timișoara. It's also a really consistent collaborative project. It's in a way similar with what we had here in the exhibition, collaboration with designers and engineers. 𝗼𝗺𝗺 is also a place of collaboration from its roots. I mean, our main investors come from the tech area, and these people trusted creativity with their money as well, which is kind of fabulous. So basically what we try to do here at 𝗼𝗺𝗺, also together with Martina and with our partners, with UPT, is to widen this perspective, is to continuously consolidate the creative perspective in the local field. And we basically try to do that by giving the cultural operators very direct support. 𝗼𝗺𝗺 is a place that hosts a lot of creative content, but also giving them this cultural playground that Bright Cityscape became and is with the help of Martina's view and perspective. And we decided to work with design instead of arts or architecture because it is such a generous field. It can accommodate so many types of discourses, and it truly gives this the possibility to play in very different and diverse languages.
Great. I mean, Loredana, you know, when we talk about people are, in any context, are constantly talking about the need for collaboration, the need for interdisciplinary, perspectives, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is especially true in academia, right? In universities. I mean, Oana was saying how one of the drivers for 𝗼𝗺𝗺 was trying to get people to break out of their silos, and of course, universities are famous, you know, for having very siloed mentalities where, you know, researchers and academics are very, very focused on their one thing. I mean, what are the structural impediments, let's say, in academia, do you think, or is the way that academia is structured now sufficient for kind of addressing these bigger questions that projects like Turn Signals is trying to address?
As you might know, maybe in Romania even worse, the legislative directions are very tight, and the way in which universities or public institutions work, it's, as you already heard, it's quite conservative. So I think even though this discourse about the inter and multidisciplinarity is so well known and already it's dating so many years back, even with Sigma, in Timișoara and at the local level, what we had until now were initiatives, independent initiatives, even from the part of professors or associated professors. So the efforts until now were very bottom-up, and of course their sustainability was not as high. It vanished once that the professor got tired of this type of projects or collaborations. But what is different now, and I'm quite proud of what the Politehnica University is doing, is that it tries also from a top-down perspective to initiate the openness of the university to a broader spectrum of actors. And of course, you all know the university had strong collaborations with companies, but now this level of initiatives brings so much more added value in terms of knowledge and promoting the research and the content of research, not only doing shows or the things that are usual for technical universities.
Sorry, Martina, just grab the mic whenever you want. Yeah, but maybe this is a good point to go to Nadine, because as a editor, writer, journalist, curator, I mean, you're working with a lot of different kinds of institutions, I think, but still sort of outside, right? And in some ways, that's fundamental to the role of curators and journalists and so on, is to keep a bit of distance, you know, while also having a broad perspective, right? Because when you write about something, when you curate, you're trying to situate it within a broader landscape. So you need to know what that landscape is. I mean, what are your sort of observations on what you see here and the kind of having been involved so deeply with Turning Signals and this incredible process? What sort of takeaways do you have on this notion of collaboration and connecting dots?
Thank you. Yeah, what is really powerful for me about the project and the way that Martina often works with her curatorial projects is setting up these design research processes and setting it up in the way that design research almost remaps something that has become so familiar, so known that we stop seeing it. The city, the industrial production cycle, the discipline that we are siloed in, and creating processes that reopen up, create tone signals. So speaking to the title of the exhibition, where we might interpret the known in different ways that might open up new possibilities of moving and so on. And then this phrase that you use, which I really enjoyed, the knowledge logistics, and then how this sort of exhibition.
This morning I came up with that. Yeah.
So who?
I just came up with that at like a couple hours ago. Yeah.
You know, like this exhibition as a kind of a knowledge logistics system in which we all play our roles. And you know, sometimes the external role. And I suppose as a journalist, I was listening to this panel earlier with the collaborators, and it was such a visceral, all these little details about how they had been affected by this collaborative process, and those little turn signals that they'd internalized in their disciplines and re-understanding their disciplines that is going to affect their classrooms. This is how this knowledge of this exhibition and these research projects starts to spread in an informal way. But then in the role as editor of the exhibition, in terms of kind of documenting those processes, not only in the labels and the curatorial text and making it accessible to people, but also in the how we've also understood the website as a platform, an archive for the kind of continuation of the exhibition beyond its existence, and also the publication. Because these exhibitions do happen in moments of time. So how do they live on beyond that? And how do they, how are they monumentalized and archived?
Well, maybe this is a nice moment then to go back to Alina, because that's exactly what you were doing with this exhibition. I wonder if there's something that we can learn now from these historical moments that you try to capture in your show, in terms of collaboration or networks of ideas and practitioners and actors, and how they come together, especially in the current sort of atomized and increasingly sort of fragmented, arguably, a climate that we're in. Art historians used to talk about movements, and art and design historians used to be able to talk about movements with some kind of validity. This makes me think of a small project we just did called 𝗼𝗿់30, that was looking at the 30th anniversary of the inauguration of 𝗼𝗿់, which was this loose collective of Dutch designers who made a big splash in the 90s. This was also, and it was really the right moment, because it was sort of at that beginning of this most recent era of globalization. So things were, the world was sort of coming together, or the movement of ideas and people was becoming much more easy. But at the same time, it was pre-internet. Right, so you still had a kind of centralization of discourse and authority and so on and so forth. So it became much easier to create a movement or to declare a movement that then had global implications. Nowadays, of course, the situation is totally different. But are there things that we can learn from the past that can inform, how we bring people together and connect ideas now?
Yeah, so I would like to continue what Nadine, because it was very nice, and just to have a sort of, let's say, common connection between the two exhibitions, because of course there is a lot behind in terms of collaboration, and it's, let's say, one concept that somehow connects and also connects the past with the present. But it's also, I think, the question, so one is to do a research and the other thing is to exhibit research. So this is something that we are concerned about, and I think the two exhibitions somehow deals with this issue. So because, of course, when you do an exhibition, it's also the matter of the viewer. So you have to take into account who is coming, and the locality somehow generates a certain parkour in the exhibition, and also how you frame what you researched. So, And it's also interesting what she was mentioning, what we do with this, how to work with the archive of the project, where, because of course there are years of practice and research and collaboration and kind of sharing between different, let's say, peers. So in our specific way, or because the topics are totally different, but how to make this archive alive, it's also an issue that we are concerned about. So there is this aspect of oral histories, which for us is really important, and we have these 2 layers, parcours video and parcours which is printed matter. So where some of, let's say, the instances and the memories one specific time are recorded and also placed into the present. And I think it's necessary at some point to have a kind of recording of what happened and some kind of selection of spaces, of times, of slots, let's say, that could be relevant for the present. So I really like in this way that the 2 project connects with this kind of concern. So of course we have the classical, the internet, we have the publication, but still how to move on. So this is more the question that we are interested in. And one aspect that, for instance, and this was very nice in my research, especially for the 90s, is that you can do more with less things. So it's not only an issue about the money. If you want, you can do things. So this is one of the lessons that we practice this without knowing, but it's also one key element of the decade.
Well, that's the entire cultural sector everywhere, I think, doing more with less. Did you want to say something? No. Well, maybe to continue that, and Martina, I know you're tired. That's why I'm asking all the questions right now, but we should get back to you in a moment. Let's continue with this question of what do we do from here, right? Exhibitions come and go, as Alina inferred, turn signals or turning signals? Turn signals. I'm sorry, turn signals. Oana and Loredana, I mean, how do you see this continuing? When this exhibition comes down after your second iteration at the school in a couple of months, where do you see it going? Like, what lasting impact do you think this process or this methodology that has been introduced through this show, where can you take it?
I think that the appetite for this type of weird collaboration, as you have heard before, is growing. I am saying that in the best sense possible, of course. And we are already next week launching another call for professors in UPT the call is for the mediation of a 3rd exhibition in Bright Cityscapes called Atlas of Distances, which will start in 2 weeks. So we are on a tight schedule again. But what I was saying is that we are launching another call for professors in order to bring forward the people in the university that have something more to say than in the traditional classes, that want to share their expertise maybe in a different manner that doesn't fit the curriculum. As I said, it's written in the law in Romania. So we are opening up the possibilities for expression, firstly for teachers and professors, but also we are making so many calls for students in order to, I don't know, mediate exhibitions or be part of the exhibitions as the one that will start in 2 weeks. So the university is doing right now, starting with this year, we are really capitalizing the year of the capital of culture because it gives a great incentive to all sorts of people to think about culture. People that maybe did go to the arts museum several times, and that's it. So really, we are doing a grassroots, in a way, building up the knowledge logistics in the university, and we started a program named UPT Creative Campus in order to bring together in an umbrella all sorts of initiatives that are in this cultural domain, or that instill creativity and use multidisciplinarity as a tool. So for sure, this is only the beginning. Another beginning. We are full of beginnings.
Yeah, I also think that with this exhibition, with this process, we just started opening some doors that I was so much looking forward to open. I think I gave Martina a bit of a hard time with the research we did with Norbert. It was really important for me that we start with this research, because the question that I always had in the back of my head was how to produce culture that has personal and direct value to the people that consume it, and in this case to the people of Timișoara. And knowing that we are an engineering, extremely pragmatic, conservative city, it was really important to start with dissecting this problem, and not problem, context, and to understand it properly. So this is why we started with this research. This is something that I want us to work on in the following years as well, because there are so many questions left to address and so many possibilities to address them with this really wide field of design. Beyond this, in a more specific way, I think traveling this exhibition to Bucharest, maybe to Rotterdam as well, or to other cities, and try to tell these stories in other contexts is just another means of understanding or getting feedback from this type of methodology that we started to implement. So another goal would be to refine it in the future. And I think that we were talking about collaboration, but maybe we missed telling a really obvious fact, the connection between locality and local resources and exterior perspectives. This is also something that we did intentionally, also Martina, in the selection of the designer that she worked with. She also engaged Romanian designers that now live abroad, but still this combination of cultures within this program is also another really important perspective. And maybe the third line that Loredana also mentioned, and I think it's really important, pedagogy, how you explain today's reality, contemporary issues in a language that is not only accessible, but interesting, playful, engaging. I think we managed to do this in the exhibition. What we are struggling now, also with the call that she previously mentioned, but also through other mediation programs that we have for both exhibitions, is try to find formats that further tell these stories to the general audience. I think we did a good job with the show. The big challenge that we have ahead is to have people interact with it, is to have us understand their perception in order to go back to what I said previously and see how we then further use this research into other forms of program. So I think we just opened many doors and many possibilities, and I'm really looking forward, after we have a good rest, to think together with Martina, what are the next steps, what are the next territories to explore?
To build on this conversation, when I was invited by Oana to visit Timișoara for collaboration on thinking of programs around design, yes, indeed the question was how to ground it, how to ground the design questions, but I came with a pack of knowledge myself. So what makes me extremely happy, apart from the results, is also the process that we activated, and the possibility for me was a really special moment to test a methodology of curating exhibitions, then I always try, maybe one day we should have a conversation, what can we use instead of curating? Because it doesn't cover entirely the method and the process indeed. All the works, I mean, in the way how I like to make exhibitions and think of exhibitions are processes in which we know the beginning maybe, or we try to know the beginning, but we don't know what the end is. And then was in a collaboration with an institution was one of the main challenges at the beginning, but because basically it's a process based on trust. And trust, not only a given trust, but potentially also trust of previous experiments. So every exhibition for me is an experiment. In this case, the requests, let's say, were real. They were really tangible. And I remember a question that I received since the beginning. It was is always been how to make a program that has a connection with the public. And this is indeed a question that then I transferred to Nadine, how to communicate what we do for a public, which is a public that in my perception is not only local, but is also international. One of the premises of the program was not only to respond to the needs of Timișoara, but also to bring what is here somewhere else. In the sense that it's not only importing knowledge, but it's also exporting. And this is a process of balance indeed. In the sense that in the application of this way of working of inviting people, practitioners to join a process of research, and then that the research becomes the exhibition. But there's not only that, it's also inviting practitioners to link in a moment or in a place of a much, much more complex machine. And so it's like going back to this idea of knowledge logistics. Logistics are complex, so sometimes we can understand only when they break, right? So it's like finding these gaps. It was also the process that we did together with Oana and Loredana since the beginning. Where are the gaps? And potentially sometimes the gaps is someone with more curiosity than others. And in that sense, looking at the future of the program, in my perspective, is not only disseminating the work as much as possible through different formats, but also to reproduce again this method, maybe enlarging the questions to what we consider. We had a lot of conversation about what's the city, right? Beyond the geographical borders, indeed. And I want to link to these questions. I have a question for Alina again. What would you like to share of this process of curating the exhibition in the context? Because the exhibition speaks by itself. That's the goal of it. Like it creates. But what would you like to share about this process that sometimes it becomes really invisible? You speak about how to bring research within the exhibition, and the exhibition becomes this container, but also generator of new questions. I have the feeling that within, especially institutional work, many processes stays invisible, and invisibility is with all the designers is a word that we shared a lot. So maybe I would like to pass this question to you. What would you like to share that is still invisible?
So you're referring to the background of the project, or?
Yeah, like a process, part of the...
It's very, as you said, I mean, this is how we started. Let's say this is how I work. So I start from some questions. So for instance, the question that started these projects are what we missed, what we learned, and what we forgot about the 90s. This was the starting point. So of course, I mean, on all the project that I did, I don't try to do a demonstration. So it's not something that has a precise kind of outcome. It's not a fini, it's not a process. So I like very much the process behind the exhibition, to be honest, because it's based always on a dialogue with the person, with the artists, also with the designer. So like, for instance, everything which is molded in the exhibition that I do in terms of identity, it's always based on my relationship with the graphic designer. So we decide together what image to choose, what type of identity would be better, and also in times of constructing the exhibition. So because it is in a way theatrical, so an exhibition, it's a setup. So, and you have to take into account always who is coming there and what kind of states you would like to share to the person who visited. And also it's very difficult somehow for somebody that it's not so much custom, and you don't ask the visitor to know everything, to have a dictionary and the whole art history behind, but just to give them the right clue, the right hint, so they get exactly the message of the work. So this is important, because behind, of course, there are processes of discovery, rediscovery, so and also of learning. So the process of research comes with a long process of learning you as well, so, and relearning. So this kind of change in the patterns and also the perception of certain things that you come up with, and sometimes at the end you end up with something else. So this is very much in a way challenging. And also, yes, I also agree with you that the term curating does not kind of define what we do. So it's always, I'm just like a researcher or art historian, I prefer better, but this is this kind of a cliche already that you have to curating means nowadays nothing. I'm sorry, but this is the reality. Everything is curating, from chairs to food. So where is our place now? So in this frame. So this is
maybe we play an important place in communicating.
Yeah, this is for sure. This is for sure, and this is important. And also what you do here, and also the structure and the infrastructure that was created here, I think is a great start for doing something. And also, I think this kind of, the idea of this interdisciplinarity, that it's obvious in what is shared in this part of the city, I mean, it should be kept, because this kind of comes from diversity, and it's something interesting.
Any comments or questions from the audience? I think you were supposed to ask a question.
I have a question for Martina. Martina, you were saying that the methodology that you tried here is different than how you practiced before, or it added.
It's built upon. It's the way how I like to set projects. It's always around a common question that then can be taken by individual practitioners and become their own. So what I was trying to say before is actually that this was a fantastic opportunity as a continuation of previous works I did, but in a context that also required me to be realistic enough with the result. In the sense that it's not the project doesn't happen in an already existing institution, which has their own infrastructure, not only of knowledge but also of public. So I had the chance to test, and also to have a team, to expand my my work with a team. So to have a company in this process of both analyzing, posing some questions, and then sharing them again, and then bringing them together through an exhibition format. And then along the way also with the same team exploring different formats of publication. So it's I like to explore the systems that shape our everyday life, and therefore something extremely tangible is always important, but in the same time also to disconnect from it, to make it playful or more theoretical or more critical. And I think this was a fantastic ground to do it, because the questions were also related to urgency of starting this discourse, not only continuing it. Questions? Or thoughts? Also thoughts?
Yeah, I just have to say something now because I was involved, so yeah. I don't know if yeah, not so far. I will stay here in the second row. So I was like, oh, maybe this is not a good idea. Yeah, it's just I will sit here because coming back to what you said, Martina, of putting things into a context, I have to say, to my disgrace, I was looking on my phone at some of the previous projects that Parasite 2.0 did, and I could see a thread, an obvious thread in the way that they approach these projects, and I immediately saw what they did here as the next project on their fabulous website. So I think what is really interesting to see is how this context is created with us within it now, because I think what we were lacking was this type of connection to this type of project, and I'm super happy that we are now able to think on different terms, how we approach design, how we approach critical thinking about such important issues as we did on industry and what the school system is, on how we can teach such subjects even in our own academic program. So once again, I think it was super relevant. It's not finished yet, but I truly look forward to the next exhibition that we'll have in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Cristian.
So just to underline some things that we all here know, but maybe those who listen to us don't, and because you said about knowledge, about collaboration, about constructing and researching knowledge, what I would like to tell everybody is that the way this program and these programs, because I'm speaking of the exhibition and about the Institute of the Present exhibition too, took care of the way we deal with the public, we talk to the public, we involve the public from the beginning. And I think from my age and my angle, this is a way to have a successful communication and a successful program and a full program, because if you don't take the public into account from the beginning, and my experience with Martina, but I know about what Alina and Stefania do, is that the mediation was there, sometimes silent, sometimes more vocal, sometimes in dialogue, from the moment the projects were written, thought, applied, and everything. If you go into the two exhibitions, you'll see young people doing the mediation, and they again come from very different areas. They are architects or young architects, young artists, young medics, young journalists, and what they did was, and I think this is something that it's important for Timișoara too. If we look at how mediation was done 20 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago in Art Encounters, in Beta, and in all the institutions, you can see that now, and these two exhibitions here are cutting edge from my point of view, is that mediation is important, and the mediators are not just the people who open the doors and plugs, I don't know, installations. They are people who researched, studied, the processes you went through at our level, of course, and the fact that, for example, in both exhibitions there are people who are doing their MAs and their PhDs and who are interested and who experiment. So what I'm saying is that everything you talked about here, I recognize in the way mediation is being done in the two exhibitions. And I think that this is going to set a pace and a quality and a content level for everything that is going to come. And one last thing, because the university has, the Polytechnical University has a bureau, whatever, a team, which is concerned with mediating art and science, and just the fact of it, that the Polytechnical thought, the rector thought of it, is important. What I've seen in the presentations of the researchers before, and you asked about legacy and how we are going to go on. If I have to summarize what they said in one phrase, is that that thing of make them experience, don't tell them, make them experience it, which we use a lot in doing mediation or in explaining that it's not only about giving the public information, but making it feel. I could see it in a loop. All the researchers, professors in the university said, I saw how beauty can enhance what I'm doing, what I'm teaching, and now I'm convinced, and now I want to do it. I want to start my first lesson course with it. And then the fact that, as Loredana said, we want to break some walls, not because people don't want to teach things differently, but they are tired, they don't know how to do it, and this would be a good opportunity. And all the four researchers are very good champions. They can do now advocacy with their colleagues. So mediation is here thanks to you all. And I think that everything without the public is not possible. And this connection with the public is done through the way curators, sorry for not having another word, and managers and entrepreneurs are looking at this relation with the public. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. That was really fantastic, and I think probably a good way to maybe conclude today's panel, because we are out of time. But maybe as the one person here who had nothing to do with anything here today, please just allow me to say that it's super impressive what you've all done, the kind of methodology, the process, the generosity, the results, and the potential. So really keep, I hope it keeps going as I know you do, and I know a lot of people will be very curious to learn more about what you're doing here and where you take it. And really congratulations to all of you, maybe Martina especially, and all the participants and collaborators who are here, who have done so much to make this a success. So thank you, congrats, and what do we do now?
Actually, I want to ask you something.
Oh. Just when I thought it was safe.
Yeah. Because we talked a lot about the content that we developed here, each of us together, but I think maybe it's important also to address the idea of the infrastructure that is needed in also to develop all this content. Faber is one such infrastructure, the university is other, the Institute of the Present is another. So in order to be able to have mediation in the end, there is really a humongous amount of effort in order to begin anything. And I was actually curious because you have a lot of experience with very diverse institutions all over the world. I was curious for your perspective or an advice for us beginners here.
Well, for one, it's hard. You know, I think it's funny, we're just now in the Netherlands, as some of you may know, having a very active discussion about spatial planning, addressing the housing crisis, all these sort of land use issues and social problems and so on and so forth. And recently there's been a call for a new National Architecture Institute. Now, I won't bore you with all the background, but there's a lot of background here. But long story short, you know, I have found, working in different parts of the world with different kinds of institutions, big and small, public, private, that you kind of have to try to let things develop. You have to orchestrate things happening organically, if that makes sense. That's what tends to work best. You know, creating something and then kind of trying to shoehorn people and organizations into kind of doing what you want them to do rarely works well. So when it comes to this debate in the Netherlands, there is, our argument is that there is a very vibrant landscape of organizations and actors, public and private, independent and governmental, that are already doing stuff. The key is to strengthen them and better define their roles and how to coordinate them. You know, it seems here in Timișoara that, you know, you've got some pretty interesting people doing interesting things. And, you know, in some ways it comes down to how the parts, well, as your, this initiative shows, it comes down to how the parts work together. So if you're asking for advice, which I think you were, it is to kind of just keep doing what you're doing, figure out how you can complement each other. Don't fall into that trap, which all too often happens, of being sort of territorial. And I mean, really, we've all seen it happen, and it never does anybody any good. And then see how you can work together in complementary ways to create a stronger ecosystem here, let's say, of efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. So now we came to the end of the conference, the City Technology and Design. Thank you all for coming and for listening to us. As I already said, Bright Cityscapes is continuing until November this year at least. So please be a part of our process in the 22nd of September, when we are opening up the third exhibition of Bright Cityscapes. It's called Atlas of Distances, and it's the result of the collaboration between 3 schools. The Faculty of Architecture and Urban Planning from Timișoara, from UPT, Design Academy Eindhoven, and TU Delft. And the exhibition is showcasing 9 projects of students that worked in a communal semester theme in order to develop projects that tackle the theme of climate and also digital transformations. And I won't come with all the program until next year, but let's meet on the 22nd, and we will talk about the next events later. In order to make all this possible, of course, we are supported by the Center of Project and the Municipality of Timișoara as the main financing body, but also the Order of Architects, Albert Foundation, and Flex Association, but also many other sponsors. Thank you all for making this possible.